Basketball fans, welcome back. So, KPA they lifted the Zone 5 title in convincing fashion after beating REG in that finals game. It was a blowout. First of all, even with the previous video I made, I'll just continue congratulating KPA because that's one thing that people think that is not gonna come from me. But of course, I love Kenyan basketball and I like to see us win, and especially in convincing fashion. And the way we took out REG was just in spectacular fashion, marking the second time that we have done it in the same tournament. And in this video, the focus will be on the Equity Hawks. I know I made a video talking about both KP and Equity finishing, in top 3. But in this video, I will talk about the repercussions of Equity finishing number 3. Number 1, we'll talk about the Equity versus REG game that was in the semis. I will not talk about the Dolphins game that landed them the number 3 spot because I don't think that game was actually relevant to this conversation. But I'll just talk about the missed opportunity that Equity would have had had they won against REG, which was a game that was winnable. I remember even on my Instagram and Facebook, I voiced my frustrations as to why we lost that game, and a lot of people took it in different ways. Some people call me a boatload of things. They call me a hater. They call me I am a person who doesn't like watching us win, which is further from the truth. But to add all context, losing that game cost the Equity Hawks a chance to participate in the Africa Women's Cup, which is slated for this December, from December 8th to 17th, which will have been very pivotal because it would have marked in our history books as the time Kenya took 2 teams, KPA and Equity, to the Africa Women's Cup. Last year we only had KPA representing. Equity got knocked out very early in the tournament, and there's that. So last year we had KPA and A Sporting going there, and A Sporting won it all in the end. And this year KPA, they outdid themselves. They had a mission. They made some very good transactions along the way in the lead up to this tournament, and they won it, which is something that is very commendable, and it's something that honestly I'm not against. I love winning, and that's the reason as to why this channel exists and the reason as to why I'm making this video. But the funny thing is the narrative changes, especially when we lose, especially with regards to like how I go about talking about basketball. I'm not apologizing for anything, don't get me wrong, I'm not. Only thing is I highlight things that people do not want to hear, and with that I get call about a lot of things. Some people call me a hater, some people to some extent even call me Skip Bayless, which is something that sometimes I laugh when I hear that because Skip Bayless is my least favorite analyst. I'm not a Skip Bayless, but I try to point out the facts because people have the tendency to remove all context, remove all variables that led to that point, and just focus on the outcome. I feel like Kenyans are just focused on short-term glory and success without looking at the long-term. Of course, we're going to talk about KPA and how they're going to match up against the teams in the Africa Women's Cup, but I will drop a video when the time is right and when that time comes. But in this video, looking at the way the Equity Hawks matched up against the REG and they lost in a very embarrassing way. I wrote down in that post chokers because I felt like they choked away that game. That was a game that was winnable. Equity had a good run, especially cutting the lead from a 13-point deficit to 3, but I just saw a quitting mentality in there, and it rubbed me off the wrong way. People who watch the whole game understand what I was saying. The people who are quick to come and criticize me and criticize like the takes I have on this channel or on this platform, if you're watching on our Instagram, the people who come out and try to say that this is someone who is hating on the team when we win is somebody who doesn't understand the whole context of what led to this point, because there were high implications as to leading into that game, the Equity versus REG game. Number 1, REG finishing silver against KPA in the finals. As much as they lost, even they got blown out, The consolation prize is they'll go to Egypt and they will play alongside KPA and all the other teams there. That would have been Equity if Equity took care of the basketball and got the job done. And it will be the first time in history that two Kenyan teams dominated a competition that was in foreign land in Rwanda, and they managed to go to Cairo, Egypt for the Africa Women's Cup. That would have marked history. Historically, we'll have had a better chance at winning, not even at winning, but going deeper if we're able to like have two teams representing the same country and add more leverage to that. I would have rather we lose there than lose here, and Equity were just that team. And when I released that post, there were so many things. I even saw on Facebook some posts were made, and I'm not gonna react to them because they mean nothing at this point because the result is already there. And one thing it begs the question is, do these players, do the coaching staff, does the organization, this is actually to the Equity Hawks organization and that franchise, do they understand the implications of losing set games? Because if someone told them, if their coaching staff were competent enough to tell them that if they lost this game, it will have cost them a shot at going to the Africa Women's Cup, I think the mentality will have been different. Other than just looking at the game, it's just a win or loss, and just looking at the next. You lost this one, you're looking at the next. If you knew that losing this game will have led to us not being able to qualify, at least qualify, because if it was a KP and Equity affair, regardless of who wins, it's a win for Kenya. But now we slashed our probability of going from 1 to 0.5 when KP went there all alone against REG. I know REG, they got stomped on by KPA. KPA did their thing and they won. But it would have been a very nice story to see two Kenyan teams proceeding, regardless of whoever won it, regardless of whoever held the title. But now we have to settle for third place, and the third place is the first place among the line of losers. So there's no difference between Equity, JKL Dolphins, APR, Gladiators, Nile Legends, Vijana Queens, and JKT Stars. Those teams that there's no difference. The only difference is that Equity finished third and they medaled, despite only losing one game and winning all the others. So it begs the question, did these players even understand the implications as to losing that game? Because that game was pivotal. If they won that, actually that was the single most important game that they needed to win, and nobody told them that early. And I feel like that's the same thing that plagued them last time, because there were no statisticians to tell them if they won this game, this will have made them automatically be in the running in the real Africa Women's Cup, not these qualifiers. They will have been in the actual tournament. This was just a prelude to what was to come. But unfortunately for Kenyans and unfortunately for coaching staff, they just focus on short-term success and meddling, and that's the reason as to why they came out and they claim that they balled out in the Dolphins game, a game that meant absolutely nothing. Of course they meddled, but the third place didn't mean anything. They were not going to qualify to do anything. So what's the point? What was the point of balling out in that game? Well, the game that mattered on the day, you couldn't do anything. So that's the reason as to why there was so much flack coming from my end to the team and also to the people, so that they can be able to be aware. Because sometimes I feel like these people who claim to follow basketball remove all context, remove all information towards games, then they act as if it's a surprise that I'm talking the way I'm talking. People who watch the whole game, I'm not talking about the people who don't watch the games, because I can even do a percentage. I feel like 95% of the people who come to Facebook and talk about the game, they don't even watch the actual game. It's only a 5% of people watch the game. Some people can give their opinion on a game and they have not even watched it. Personally, I took my time to watch every single game live, and I replayed every single minute of every single game. So I watched those games, each of those games, at least 2 to 3 times. So when I came out with like my conclusive opinion and premise on like what we needed to do, I was coming from a point of knowledge, and you can do fact checking because I've made videos talking about the same, and I've highlighted some weaknesses and pain points that I've seen. Even despite the win, I felt like there were some things that we were letting go and we are not concentrating on fixing them. And those things came back to roost, and REG were able to expose them from the Equity Hawk side, and Equity just blew that chance. Now they have nobody to complain to. They are now back in Kenya and they're going to play again here in KBF, and hopefully they don't get swept by the Zitex Sparks, because if you remember, the Zitex Sparks swept Equity, and the reason why the Equity Hawks were there in that tournament is because Zitec didn't have the finances to be there. So they were there in a borrowed seat, and in that borrowed seat they failed to take advantage of it. And this might be the closest they might be able to get to, especially in such a context, because you don't know how next year is gonna look. You don't know how the year after next year is gonna look. So I feel like this is a wasted opportunity, and I feel like the team, the coaching staff, the team managers, they still don't understand like how the format of this contest works and the implications of these games, because if they knew, they would not have lost that game, and they will have done their very best. Because when I looked at the fourth quarter, I saw the women there looking tired. They didn't want to be there, they didn't want to play. It's like they were being forced to play. And honestly, it's a very bad look, especially for a team that's perceived as one of the two best teams in the country. It's KP and Equity. The women's division runs through KP and Equity, and looking at them fail like that in that fashion, it's embarrassing. It's totally embarrassing, and they actually should be worried why they don't understand the format of competitions. Because if they took those qualifying games, they took the quarterfinals, semifinals games seriously, they wouldn't be in this point. And that's all I have to say about this video. I know a lot of people don't understand these nitty-gritties and these nuances to these games, but it's a missed opportunity on the Equity Hawk side, and I don't think they're going to be able to come across such a nice golden opportunity again, because games progressively keep getting much more difficult. But kudos to KPA. Of course, I'm going to congratulate the team. They have made Kenya proud, unlike Equity finishing third. And I'm not throwing shit at Equity, but I feel like they didn't understand the implications on a game by game basis. If they knew that they needed to win that game, they wouldn't have looked the way they looked, they wouldn't have quit the way they quit, and we'll have had two Kenyan teams proceeding. Look at REG. REG, even despite being blown out by KP, it's still a win. They medaled silver, and they're on their way to Cairo, Egypt for the Africa Women's Cup. Where is Equity headed? Home to compete with these other women's teams that can't pose any threat to them, while KPA are just going back and trying to pick up from where they left off. Last year they made the quarterfinals, they didn't do anything significant there. But looking at the way things are headed right now, KPA, this squad, they might go the distance, and they might make even the semifinals or finals if they keep maintaining, and if they change up a bit in how they play their offense. Because sometimes some games, even despite the win, they didn't look the greatest, and they look to exploit the other team's weaknesses. But if you match up against an elite team that knows how to play the basketball games pretty well, they can be able to win those games if they play well. But from one thing I've seen from even looking at film from the previous Africa Women's Cup, KPA perform well against Zone 5 teams. This is not a knock to them, but when they match up against Zone 1 to 4 teams, they really struggle, and they're not able to find their footing the way they have been. So yeah, that's all I got for you guys. So Equity, this is a missed opportunity. I know this will add some context to what led me to ask them the tough questions and tell them the things they didn't want to hear, but it is what it is. And yeah, I'm here to make sure to bring clarity to issues. So if you guys like the video, make sure to leave your feedback down in the comments. I'm out, man. Peace.